Hello, 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 hello. Good to see you. Good to see you. So do say hi. Let me know who you are and where you are and how your day is going. Welcome, welcome, welcome. So we've got a lot of you signed up today, an awful lot of you signed up today. And so I just would love to connect with you all. So let me know how you are, how's your day going, where you're tuning in from. Let me know. Say hi. Vienna. That sounds very, very glamorous. Sounds very glamorous. Hello. Hello, Jenny. Hi, hi. Hi, guys. Lovely to see you. Lovely to see you. Gosh, we've got an international crowd today. Glamorous Westminster. I think Westminster's glamorous, for goodness sake. I think Westminster's absolutely glamorous. Hi, Antonella. Good to see you. Good to see you. We're going to give it a minute or two just whilst everybody's joining us. And I'm going to see if I can turn off my notifications so people aren't listening to that. Let's just see. Let me see if I can turn off notifications. I've got a new laptop, so I think these are probably still, yes, there we go. Okay, I think I've managed to do it. We'll see. We shall see. Okay, good to see you. Hi, Alicia. Hi, Laura. Hello, hello, hello. How's everyone doing? Going to give it another minute before we get started. So I'm going to throw out a question before we actually get started today. Is what would you like to gain from today's session? You've joined me in Seoul, some of you in your lunch hours, some of you from different time zones all over the world, but what would you like to leave today's session with? Either a way of thinking or feeling or acting. We're talking all things communication today. And I have to say, trying to whittle it down to 45-minute session is quite challenging, but we're going to do a light touch on, I think, some of the ways that I think everybody can elevate their communication skills. Oh, my notifications are still on. That's frustrating. Never mind. Let's see if I can get rid of those. Sorry, guys. I just don't want anybody being disturbed by pings and bings. We've got enough of those in our lives. Okay, communicate effectively in times of conflict or stress. Confidence. Yeah, feeling more confident. Isn't it crazy that communication is one of the most important elements of every single aspect of our well-being, and yet we don't get any training at all at school or throughout our education or those formative years on communication, or very, very, very rarely. Okay, so lots of people looking to be more clear, more confident, reducing filler words. Yes. Excellent. Leaning into challenging conversations. Yeah, yeah. And that's another thing that Simon Sinek talks about all the time, is just how powerful it would be if we had training on how to lean into challenging conversations. Okay, so I think we'll probably get started. We may have some more people join us. All right, well, I've had a busy morning. I have been meeting clients. I've been talking to candidates. I've been involved in shortlisting some of the roles that we're hiring for. And I communicate all day, every day. And having been in recruitment for the last 24 years, I have spent my whole life in communications. And what I've learned is that communication is an art. And throughout my studying with the ICF over the last 4 years in becoming a coach, I have really understood on a whole new level how to deepen my capability to be heard, to be seen, but just as importantly, to really hold space for others to do the same thing. And ultimately, communication is around connection. And we get very confused when it comes to how to deliver our messaging. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about that today. We've only got a lunch and learn, so it's going to be some high touch stuff rather than that in-depth knowledge. But I'm really hopeful that you will take away some really implementable tools and that you can go away and put into practice immediately. Okay, so I want to introduce myself a little bit. I think I know lots of you on the call, but I'm sure there's some of you that I haven't yet had the pleasure of connecting with. But I'm Lucy Chamberlain, and these are some of the clients that we work with in both recruitment and in training. And I set up CNC Search nearly 10 years ago in order that we could become the socially conscious recruiter of choice. And what does that mean? It means living out our values in day-to-day action. So that is legacy, in partnership, and in delivery. So we work very, very closely with all sorts of female pipeline organizations to deliver a more equitable world of work. And what I'm most proud of that we've delivered as an organization is we've supported, as a result of being able to use the profits from our recruitment business, we've been able to support over 6,000 women with pro bono training that have had career gaps for whatever reason in order that they enter the world of work back where they ought to be, rather than sometimes because of the erosion of confidence in where they think they need to be. And so thank you to all of you that have partnered with us so far on searches and training. It means that we are able to deliver more of that incredible work. So thank you very much indeed. I also happen to be an ICF coach. I'm qualified in all sorts of different coaching modalities. I am very proud to deliver that into the Development Academy. We get together twice a month for group coaching and for a learning and development workshop. You are very welcome to come and join us anytime you like there. I'll ask Pippa to pop the link in just in case you want to explore a little bit more about what that means. So let's get into communication. And for me, communication is connection. We have so many different modalities of communication. So there is written communication, which is pretty obvious, right? It's in the written word. But of course, when I was growing up, there wasn't the complexity around written communication, which is the WhatsApp, the Slack messages, the level of emails. I had no idea we were going to enter a world of work where the vast majority of our working population within the next 5 years will prefer written communication over verbal communication, which is an interesting statistic. So written communication, oral communication, non-verbal and visual communication, active listening is a form of communication. Did you know that? And contextual communication. So this is communicating effectively to multiple people in situations or in particular environments or in corporate settings or crisis communication, or it might be giving a presentation like I'm doing right now. Now have a guess, all of you that are online, and there are nearly 200 of you live here with me today. Have a guess at what the biggest proportion of our communication is. In what form would you say our biggest proportion of communication is in? Yes, you are absolutely right. Okay, so Albert Mehrabian, that's exactly how I should pronounce it. So it was the wonderful Albert who was a researcher of communication and body language who first broke down the components of interaction in terms of a conversation face to face. And 55% of all of our communication is non-verbal. And this is why presence is going to be something we're going to touch on today. 38% vocal and 77% words only. And I'm also going to touch on that because I think that really deserves a little bit of an explanation. What I absolutely know for sure is that the way we communicate determines, and our ability to communicate determines the quality of our relationships and of our lives and careers. The reason is that the vast majority of our challenges as human beings comes from unmet needs. And our ability to communicate our needs and our feelings transforms our lives. But I'm going to give you another statistic right now, which is that 97% of our time is spent in unconscious communication. Statistically, the vast majority of us spend most of our time in that unconscious place, with only 3% of our time being spent in conscious communication. So how do we get there? Because ultimately, this is one of the things I really hope to share with you today, is some of the tools to take you from that unconscious place into a conscious place of communication. And for any of you that want an amazing book on communication, incredible, and some of you may have read it, and I've got my copy here. I've got loads of books on communication, but for me, one of the very, very best is a book called Nonviolent Communication, A Language of Life. It's gone through 3 different editions, and it is absolutely transformative. If any of you are book geeks like me, dive in. It's fantastic. So when we talk about communication or conscious communication as a way of life, we are talking about the ability to understand others' needs below what's being communicated on that surface level. We are somebody that is capable of seeking out feedback from our communication. We are also somebody that is able to express our needs in a way that allows others to meet them. What does this mean? There are 5 levels of communication, and I'm going to ask everybody here, once I've explained what those look like, is where do you think you sit most of the time? So problematic communication, this is the ability to create a connection and express needs, be heard, be seen, and afford the other party the same thing as well. It's often unclear. It's often based on assumptions and biases, and often those being presented as facts, poor listening skills, leading to lots of misunderstandings and relationship breakdowns. And actually where we struggle most with empathy is often with those we are closest to, where misunderstandings happen all the time, and where what we are saying and what somebody is understanding from it are completely misaligned. Now, the standard, which is where the majority of the population sit at any time, is baseline communication that sort of gives us what we need. So we are in a restaurant, we ask for a salad, we get a salad. We ask for directions, we get directions. It works well enough, but doesn't create connection. And because we are so time poor now, we are the most time poor we have ever been because of the demands of the digital age and because of our culture and cult of busyness. Most of us spend most of our time in human doing rather than being a human being. And so standard communication has become the norm. Short, sharp, quick, doesn't invite questions to clarify, doesn't invite feedback, and is really just an exchange of baseline information. Then we get into effective. This is where things get a little bit better. So this is where some awareness is brought to our communication. So some learning has taken place, some new behaviors are being trialed, and there are some different aspects that we're starting to pay attention to in effective communication. So we're thinking about our body language. We're thinking of using some listening skills. We're thinking about how our written word might be received. And we're starting to think of communication as a way of improving our relationships rather than simply an exchange of information. Skilled communication. Okay, so how do we get to this point? This is using awareness and skill in our communication and being super aware that there are different styles of communication. And when we can adapt to someone else's communication style, their preferred communication style, this is where skilled communication comes in. A really acute awareness to how we're listening to others, creating safe spaces where someone else can say what they need to, and self-managing. This is what is also a critical part of skilled communication. And what self-management means is where we're able to self-regulate during a conversation. And then the last, which is where I hope I'm going to be able to nudge you towards today, is conscious communication. This is that 3% place, but this is also a place of calm, non-judgment, deep, meaningful connections, the ability to express need, the ability to share feedback, receive need. And it's the pinnacle of all communication techniques. And it starts with a real understanding of the brain, which is where obviously all our communication originates, and leveraging that information. So it is allowing, or it's the capability to take our mind into a positive, open, aware state so that we can be our most thoughtful, our most collaborative, our most deeply empathetic, our most considerate, our most creative, our most clear, and our most non-judgmental self. It is a place where stress levels become low, where focus is high, and where confidence is built, but that deep, deep self-confidence, which is not loud or brash, that place of self-trust. Because ultimately, where does the word confidence come from? It comes from the Latin word confide, with trust. And conscious communication, this is the place of deep self-esteem. We can all get there. It's accessible to all of us, but it takes work. Like anything, nothing changes if nothing changes. But we all want some of that, right? We all want more peace, calm, connection, harmony. But we are all embedded in communication styles that have somehow served us in our lives. Our communication style is often survival related because of experiences that we've had in the past, in order that we have felt acceptable, that we felt belonging. And this is why when you come across somebody else's communication style that you find challenging, that conscious part of our communication, if we're going to move into that, it's about understanding that underneath that, there has been an unmet need. So if we are passive aggressive in our style, if we are submissive, if we are aggressive, it is because that has become a survival technique. It's how we've been seen. It's how we've been heard. It's how we've managed to get our way. It's a learned behavior, but it is all survival or fear related. But as we know, there is no blame and no shame attached to these communication styles, but they are not effective. They don't deepen relationships. They don't create a happy, fulfilling, successful, collaborative life. They don't build great cultures. But our awareness of these styles and being able to work with them helps to create shifts in those around us as well as ourselves. Because ultimately we want an assertive style of communication, where we are clear because clear is kind, where we mean what we say, but we never are mean when we say it, where we are ultimately aware of our own needs, but more acutely aware of others. And I wonder for you, what resonates here? So do you resonate with a learned behavior that's been your survival technique, because it's felt like that's what you've had to communicate, how you've had to communicate in order to be heard? And I know myself, when I was going through, I got divorced, and I was in a very, very, very difficult relationship before I decided to leave that relationship eventually. And I would flip between submissive and aggressive. And I would flip between those as a way of trying to get my needs met. And of course, neither were going to get my needs met, but in my need to be heard, to be seen, and to be loved, I was flipping between those two communication styles. And I wonder for you what resonates, because that was my survival technique. I was trying to make that happen in order that my needs were met. So it's interesting, isn't it? And Lindsay's sharing that at one point you were in that submissive place. And often when we're people pleasers, we spend most of our time in submissive. If we are in that place of, people pleasing, it's very, very useful. And yes, Flora, we're going to record this session and share it. We absolutely will. But I bet for a lot of you, it resonates. Because we see all of our, we conduct all of our communication. So this is what we say and what we hear, what we share and what we receive. Communication is two-way all the time. We filter all of our communication through lenses. And we don't often separate what we think and what we feel in communication. Because we relate in our communication, we say, I feel I wasn't heard in that conversation. But actually, unheard isn't a feeling. So I think I was unheard, or I wasn't listened to in that conversation, is something we need to own. Because we have all of these beliefs, we have all of these stories that we attach to things, because we're triggered all the time from, hysterical, historical, helpful, everything we see or feel or experience is experienced through those lenses, but most is historical. And we make things mean something it doesn't. So if we are in a place of low self-esteem in communication, or a perceived power imbalance in communication, often we are unconsciously seeking out proof that we are who we think we are, or our worth is what we think we are worth. And so we attach meanings to things all the time in communication, all the time. And we don't share the same communication filters, two humans. So unless we're in our conscious brain, what happens is we make something mean something it doesn't mean. We make something mean something it doesn't mean. So we will make judgments around values, we'll interpret communication in light of our values. And our belief systems, our past experiences. So our past experiences influence our current communication all the time. We hear a certain tone of voice and we connect it in our brain to an experience of that tone of voice in the past, which was either meant we were accepted or unacceptable. Our brain is constantly looking for any kind of experience that may set off a little grenade in our brain, and it tries to hunt those down and prepare us for them. And it is in those moments where we are then attaching meaning to things that may not mean any of those things. Our prejudices, our feelings, because whatever meaning our brain maps out for the input, it creates an internal state of being. So you can imagine this really easily. If you think about the last time that you had some bad news, you would respond with either sympathy, empathy, fear, anger. You might want to cry or yell. And your brain is then searching all the time for meanings and for words. And for whatever that internal state that's created, usually related to a previous experience, will then mean, in terms of the communication that we're receiving or expressing, that it'll be filtered through that past experience. So values, beliefs, past experiences, prejudices, feelings, environment, and most of all, judgment. So many of us come from a place of judgment when we're communicating. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about why that is going on in the brain, because this will enable us to start to move into a place of conscious thought, of conscious communication. So the back of our brain, let's talk about our most prehistoric part of our brain, the survival brain, or the part of our brain that I call the bear. So much of our communication, when we're filtering experiences because of negative experiences we've had in the past, immediately comes from the bear. So this is fight, flight, freeze, fawn. This is the bit where somebody says to you, hey, you didn't put the dishwasher on. Hey, you didn't put the bins out last night. It's that bit of our brain. That's the fight. The flight is where somebody says something to you that you find challenging and you just flee. You avoid it, you move away from it, you don't lean into it. The freeze is exactly that, where we just do not know how to respond. And the fawn is where we pretend to agree, or we ingratiate ourselves even more. It's that slightly kind of flirtatious. It's making someone else feel good, even when it's not our truth, even when inside we're screaming, I don't agree with this. This isn't something I want to subscribe to. That fight, flight, freeze, or fawn is learned in childhood from harsh words from teachers or from pupils or parents. And so when it comes back again, if we haven't done the work on developing that conscious communication, we then start to move into that flight, flight, freeze, or fawn. And so often you hear just blame going back and forth in that place. I blame you, you blame me, and so it goes on. And what then happens is we are wounded and we go away and we carry that with us, and then we make it mean something, and then we blame some more, resentment deepens, and nothing productive happens from that place, and it's totally disempowering. The next bit is our teenage brain. This is the chimp, as I call it. So this is the part of our brain that's a bit more awake, but it is the bit that judges. It's the bit that feels, I deserve to be heard. I deserve to be proven right. You should know what I'm saying. You should understand what I mean. This is the part of our brain that throws all of the toys out the pram the moment we do not feel heard or seen. And of course, connection is not developed in either parts of those brains. This is the part of our brain that says to us, do you know who I am? Do you know what I've done for you? Do you know what I've delivered for you? Do you know how hard I've worked for you? I should, I deserve. Again, not a place of empowerment. False empowerment, briefly, hugely ego-driven. And then here is our guru. This is the part of our brain, our amygdala, which moves into a place of all seeing and all questioning. Not all seeing, all knowing, but all seeing, all questioning. This is the part of our brain that gets curious, not furious. This is the part of our brain that can own the word I. I am feeling, I would like, I need. This is the part of our brain that lets go of judgment, but most importantly, this is the part of our brain that allows us to express our needs and also allows us to determine underneath the communication style of others what they are really needing. What do they really need to convey? What is it they're really needing in terms of from me right now in this moment? And it distinguishes between thoughts and feelings, and it allows us to build incredibly powerful relationships at work, at home. This is the part of our brain that's able to recognize our boundaries and express them. It's the part of our brain that allows us to receive feedback and determine what's useful and share feedback without pleasing and needing to please, and knowing that other people's reaction is their stuff. One of the most powerful things somebody ever told me is what other people think of you is none of your business. Because ultimately, if we're showing up in our conscious brain and we are looking to really understand, to really hear and be really present, the rest of it, none of our business. Empathy is one of the most powerful communication tools we have. When we come at the world from our perspective, it makes it very challenging. But when we come from a perspective of mutual benefit, it's going to have an incredible, incredible impact. When we spend our time listening for people's feelings and needs, learning to hear them, even when they're not communicating them very effectively, it's an incredible way to develop a really strong relationship. And one of the most, when somebody's angry, frustrated, one of your absolute tools for powerful communication is empathy in that moment. And there is a really, I think, some tried and tested methodology in communication, in that conscious communication, is I'm okay, you're okay. And what this means is the deep understanding that when you and I come together, that we are equals. And when we communicate from that place, not I'm okay, you're not okay, not I'm not okay, you're okay, not neither of us okay, but when we come from a place in our communication that, hey, I'm okay and you are too, you are equals. You're not holding a sense of inferiority or superiority, even if you are not in agreement. And you are comfortable with yourself and you're comfortable with the other person being themselves. It's a big deal to get to this place because you have to let go of judgment. You have to let go of the stories you've attached. And it's about that deep self-trust. One of the ways to help create more trust in a situation like that is to spend 50% of the time making eye contact when you're speaking and 70% when you are listening. So being present in your conversations with the intent of developing trust. For me, I try and imagine myself in a bubble when I'm with somebody. One of the easiest and quickest ways to break trust is to be typing. And this happens all the time when we're online in meetings, doesn't it now? Where you are, and you can see it, and you're on the screen with somebody, you're sharing something, and you can see them typing or reading an email or going on online. And actually, presence is the foundation of trust. And trust is the foundation of expert communication. It's also about speaking in the positive, staying in language which is positive and optimistic and non-blaming, avoiding you are, you did, you think, and owning the word I think, I feel, I need, I'm observing. Being really present with that body language and being real with your feelings, because clear is kind. Cut the fluff. Nobody stays present if you are not being in your integrity, which means being deeply honest. And 80% of communication is in the listening. If you're in that place where you're in combative listening, you can hear it because people cut people off all the time in combative listening. They cut their sentences. They talk over them. They're looking to make a point. They are responding and not reacting. They're listening in order that they will be heard. Combative. Competitive. You hear this too, don't you, in communication? Somebody expressing what they did, somebody immediately relates it back to them and something they did. Passive. So that place where you hear, but you don't really, you're not really active in terms of the conversation. You're sort of there, you're kind of there, you're kind of not. And then lastly, active listening. So active listening is the place of conscious communication. This is where I am leaning into what you are trying to tell me, where I'm listening for your needs, where I'm listening in order that I can respond and not react. And that is the place we need to really work at, especially because we are so distracted now by all of the bleeps, pings, emails, texts, WhatsApps, phone calls, you know, so on and so on and so forth. We are becoming the most distracted we have ever been as human beings. Our ability to focus has diminished by 21% over the last 10 years. That is a huge change in our ability to focus. And that means our ability to be present is equally as damaged. So we've got to work hard on our active listening. What I love when you move into active listening is the richness that you get from conversations and from how you make someone else feel. You release amazing oxytocin, both of you, if you're in person, and it's less so, but it can still happen on screen when you are in active listening. Both of you co-regulate, and oxytocin, that long-lasting happy hormone, is released in both human beings. It's well worth investing your time in deepening. So I think we're talking here about getting into our conscious brain, this part of our brain, and how we get there. But we need to understand a little bit more about how the brain derails us all the time, just so you understand how hard we need to work on that muscle of active listening. And that is, our brain can hear between 300 and 500 words a minute. Our brains are extraordinary. And we fill in those gaps because people can speak, generally speaking, at 200 or 300 words a minute. And so we fill in the gaps, we make assumptions. How many times have you been with your partner or with a best friend and they finish your sentence for you? Not active listening, passive listening. And of course, then we don't feel seen, we don't feel heard, we get frustrated, we move into blame. You never listen to me, either in our brains or expressed. Big difference, right? Big difference. So how do you get somebody to listen to you? How do you get somebody to really hear you? Because the vast majority of challenges in relationships, or whatever mode of relationship they are, is we don't feel heard. Well, are you expressing your needs? Are you sharing what you need from the other person? The vast majority of us never do. But one of the gold standards of communication is communicating with somebody in terms of their own abilities and, well, their own preferred mode of communication. And it's asking for feedback in those conversations is absolutely critical. How am I being heard right now? Is this landing? Can I go into more detail in an area? Is there anything that you found challenging in that conversation? And there's some genius ways to start really firing up that part of our brain that's going to take you into conscious communication. And if you read it, there's a great book called Are You Really Listening by Dr. Mary Siege. Amazing book. If you really want to get black belt at this listening skills stuff, have a read of it. Amazing, because it requires skill and discipline. And so paraphrasing back, so essentially that's giving the essence of the message spoken by the communicator, but in different words, or reflecting feelings. So amazing active listeners reflect the feelings back to the communicator, and the communicator, the person speaking, then feels validated by the emotional response of the person listening, and they really feel your presence. It does need an emotional rapport. And then reflecting meaning. So what I'm understanding from this conversation is that when this situation happens, you feel this way, and you would like me to do X or Y. And then also to summarize, it's very similar to paraphrasing back to the person communicating, but it's promoting efficiency in the communication. So it's a bit more of a sort of bullet pointed summarization of the conversation have had. So I wonder how often in your conversations are you demonstrating that active listening? When you are coaching, you have to imagine that you're in a bubble, and you have to be compassionate towards yourself, that sometimes the thought of, oh, damn, I forgot the broccoli for tonight is going to pop in, but you just allow it to leave. But really imagining that it is only you and that person in the world, and you are there to really try and understand their needs, is incredible. Because in our language, and words have so much power because our brains are listening, we will often create a power imbalance without even knowing it. And as a result of that, we often then feel more unheard and unseen, and more unable to express a boundary or our needs. And some of these habits are in saying words like, oh, sorry, but can I just have 5 minutes of your time? Or disclaimers, I'm probably wrong, but I've probably got all of this wrong, but, or rushing, or asking all the time. Does that make sense? Kind of, almost. Oh, it's just this, or it's just that. And we immediately feel small when we say those words. We immediately feel unimportant. We immediately feel that we are not in a place of I'm okay, you're okay. We're moving into that I'm not okay, you're not, you are okay place. Owning, I need 5 minutes of your time, it's important. And one of the biggest ones that everybody spoke about at the beginning was, how do we have challenging conversations? Well, that is definitely a whole other session in itself. So I promise to run a session on challenging conversations. But the biggest part of challenging conversations to recognize is they are a way of deepening relationships. They are a way of building trust. They are a chance to develop your relationship in a really positive way. And for me, one of the biggest ways of evolving a relationship is to lean into the challenging conversation. Because without that, you have no truth and trust in terms of how you're communicating. But it's definitely a skill all of its own. And today we're really talking about moving into that conscious place. So building rapport, deepening our understanding, looking at how we can reflect back to build those relationships where we're able to express our needs. And how do we do that? Well, in several ways. We start to be much more outcome focused. What would be a win-win for both of us from this conversation? And that means consciously thinking about what you're going to say and the response. It's also noticing, is this getting the right kind of emotional response from the person? Is that person shutting down? Are they moving into fight, flight, freeze, fawn? And if so, how can I get some feedback at this time so we can move into a place where we are both, I'm okay, you're okay. So making sure we're being really aware of the responses that we're getting, and is that the response we wanted to elicit? And if it isn't, how do we get back? Owning, I don't feel that I'm communicating this effectively. Because expressing our intent for communication is critical, even when you don't think it's needed. Letting the person know before you start communicating what it is you're hoping for from the conversation for both of you is really key to allowing that other person to feel safe. Being clear, having the right knowledge, having prepared, making sure you are in the right place for that person. Now, let me tell you, if you are at work, any of you that are in a working environment, the minute you say to somebody, can I just have 5 minutes? So first of all, you've said the word just, but also, can I just have 5 minutes? Can I tell you where that sends that person on the other end of that message straight away into fight, flight, freeze, fawn? Because we are going into the unknown, we have no prep time, we don't know what that person's going to be discussing, and we move immediately into survival mode. So if nothing else from today, take away that never say to somebody, can I just have 5 minutes? Let the person know your intent, what you'd like to discuss, what you hope the outcome might be. Really critical. Because letting go of the judgment of others, moving into that place of empathy, moving into a place of collaboration and consciousness is an incredibly empowered place to be, but you have to be willing to do the self-analysis work. Where am I really coming from here? What is my agenda? How am I making sure I'm getting feedback from the other person? What's their experience of my communication? And if their experience isn't a positive one, is that something I need to work on, or is that their own stuff? And it takes a lot of skill and a lot of work, but eventually it becomes more instinctual. Because we want to be in that conscious place of responding over reacting. We all know it, right? The message that you send back immediately is never going to be the message that you would send 12 hours later if you've been triggered. And that ability to self-regulate is really critical. So when I am feeling triggered in a conversation, and I can feel it because I can feel it in my body, for me, it's about learning, well, I have learned now the skill to self-regulate, which is to feel my sit bones in the seat, feel my feet on the floor, tell myself I'm absolutely safe in this moment. I am okay. If you're with somebody that's really challenging, that often triggers you in conversations, there's 2 great ways to really help you that are neuroscience based. One is to imagine a figure of 8 rolling on its side like this, and to breathe. And then also, if you need to, before you go into a conversation with somebody that has often triggered you in the past, is to put on a big cloak of protection. Just imagine yourself putting on a huge cloak. You can have whatever silk lining you want and wrap that around you. And remind yourself, I'm okay, you're okay. Because anybody that's communicating with you in an aggressive way or cannot see your emotional reaction, theirs will be an unmet need somewhere underneath that too. I think for me, having an agenda, so Alicia just said, what do you think about having a cup of tea with me? It's still going to send somebody into fight, flight, freeze, fawn, because they know full well they're walking into a situation which they do not know what's going to come. Let people know. It takes a lot of adulting, but it will make a very big difference in general to your capability to lean into more challenging conversations. So when you're planning more challenging conversations, you can use the WHOOP technique. What's my wish from this conversation? What would be the outcome if I get that wish? What are the likely obstacles? And how can I plan for that? And asking, how can I plan ABC, best case, medium case, and worst case? Because if you've done all those things, you will be able to regulate much more. But the big thing is to breathe into your stomach, to breathe full stop, because actually, especially women, don't spend much time in those more challenging conversations breathing. Because, well, I mean, systemically, we've been told to be kind, be nice, make other people happy, smile, perform. And so we're even more uncomfortable with those uncomfortable conversations. So explain your intent, even if it seems unnecessary. And this means that you should be telling the other person what you're trying to accomplish. Let them know, even if it's on email, why you're sending it and what you're hoping to achieve. By explaining your intent, you'll be able to communicate far more effectively, avoid misunderstandings, and it might seem unnecessary, but I promise you it will make communication so much more effective. So define your purpose. Ask clarifying and open-ended questions whilst you're talking. Make sure that you are checking in. Do you need some more information on that? Do I need to clarify? Would it be helpful for me to clarify anything? Is this clear? And some of the most effective communicators are the world's leaders, and they've mastered the art of communication. And so have a look at how they do it and mean what you say. It's really important to be clear, to be concise, honest, and authentic. So abandoning yourself in that flight, fright, freeze, fawn. So that fawn bit is the bit where we agree with people when we don't agree because of our desire to belong, to not be rejected. But actually authentic relationships, deep relationships built on true communication comes from a place of authenticity and truth. And assess yourself. How did that go? How was I communicating? How was it received? And you're never going to be able to change anybody else. You know, somebody's mentioning, what do you do if the other person's not receptive? Well, that's their stuff. Our responsibility is ourselves and our communication. One of the ways to help understand our reaction to conversations that we found particularly challenging is to use the three chairs method. The three chairs method, and I talked to my team about this, is, and I know that we've got about 7 minutes left, everybody, so much to cover. Don't worry, we're going to finish on time. I'm going to have a little bit of time for questions and answers too. The three chairs method is to sit in one chair and look at your own experience of that. I felt really frustrated. I felt really angry. I felt this, I felt that, and then put yourself in the position of the other person and truly imagine how they felt. And then the third chair, this is the advisory chair. You put yourself in this chair and you give advice to both parties. And what that helps again to do is to deepen that ability to consciously communicate, because we start to be able to observe needs. You cannot get anybody else to change. Our sole responsibility is to ourselves. But what I do know for sure, Anne-Marie, and hello, by the way, is that understanding somebody else's difficult communication style is always masking an unmet need. And if we know that, we can deepen our empathy. And if we can deepen our empathy, we can lessen the impact that someone else's reaction rather than response is having on us. So this is an amazing poem by an incredible woman called Ruth Beber Mayer. And I hope these words will just sort of sit with you in your subconscious and help you to understand that clear communication from a place of non-judgment, deep self-compassion, absolute empathy and understanding that most communication or miscommunication as a result of not expressing our needs will really help to create a fantastic, happy, healthy, less stressed, less triggered life. So before I take any questions, and I'm going to stop sharing to do that, you can scan to get in touch with us. We've got a huge charity initiative at the moment that we are looking to raise £10,000 ourselves for the Young Women's Trust. And if you hire through us, we've got this amazing, very fun, fantastic incentive. So even if you just brief us on a role and we secure interviews, it all kicks off and it's a lot of fun, but actually there's a very deeply powerful impact it's going to have. So get in touch with us and we can tell you more about that. So I'm going to stop sharing now. And I would just love to take any questions. We've got time for a couple of questions. And I'll share the poem and the author afterwards, Ruth. Any questions, or just let me know what you're taking away from today. What is one thing you are going to take away from this hour you've invested with me today? Let me know what you're taking away, what's been useful. Let me know what's been useful for you today and what's been helpful or something you're going to really work on that's going to have a really great impact in terms of that conscious communication. I'm glad you've got a lot from it. Breath work, yeah. Figure of 8, good. The 3 chairs, yes, so impactful. That real active listening. Oh, I'm so pleased that you're all taking something from it. And somebody just mentioned public speaking tips. Read a book called Own the Room by Viv Rossrop. We'll take that. I'm so glad it's been good and that you've enjoyed it. I'm really, really pleased. Makes me very happy. Yeah, great. Good. I'm so pleased. Well, listen, everybody, stay in touch. Connect with me on LinkedIn. Make sure that you reach out to us if you are hiring. We can only do all this amazing work because people partner with us. So thank you very much indeed for attending, for being so responsive, and have a really, really wonderful rest of your day. Sending all the love to all of you, and I will see you all very, very soon, I hope. Take care, everyone. Bye, guys. Have a great rest of your day. Bye, everyone.